Hello and welcome to the English Lesson Cafe podcast, where you can listen in on our conversations to improve your English. My name is Mark and I'm here with my wife.
My name is Hillary.
We are back again with more of our daily life conversations to help you learn as you listen. Hello and welcome back to today's episode. Thanks for joining us once again. And today we talk about another addition to the family.
Kind of a surprise addition to the family.
True.
If you haven't listened to the past podcasts, we're kind of building on the last podcasts. So if you listen from one and keep going, it'll make more sense. All of it will come together better. So just encouraging you that if you haven't listened to the past ones, you would want to listen to those because we're kind of building, talking about our family, the beginning of our family and how it progressed from just me and Mark to where we are now with our entire family.
You can follow along on the journey.
Yes. And last time we talked about our son named Mark Jr. and told the whole story about what happened with him. And if you followed that story, you know that it was kind of a complicated pregnancy. And the doctors told us that they were unsure how I even was able to get pregnant because of the cyst that was there. And then after they removed it, they said that our chances of getting pregnant again were lower. That was something that was always in the back of my mind. However, we were trusting the Lord, and the Lord kept Mark Jr. safe while he was in the womb, even with the complications. And so then we were just trusting the Lord that he would give us whatever he wanted us to have for our family. So when Mark Jr. was about 6 months old, we found out that we were expecting another child. And since we'd had a positive experience with the midwife for our first pregnancy, we decided to go that route again.
I felt excited.
Yes.
We were 1/5 of the way to the basketball team.
That's what I was about to say. You thought it would be another addition to your basketball team.
No, in all seriousness, I was really excited. Obviously for myself, for you, but for Mark Jr. because the joy that a parent feels when one of their children, especially if it was the only one so far, when you know there's another child about to join the family and you know that they're about to gain a sibling. So they're about to gain a playmate. They're about to gain a friend. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you're happy. As a couple, you're happy that the family's getting bigger. But a lot of my thoughts went towards him because I knew how I felt having siblings growing up. It's always in the parent's mind regarding the responsibility of caring for another child.
I think for myself, I was also concerned about the pregnancy because the first pregnancy had so many twists and turns that it was concerning to go through another pregnancy. Is everything going to be okay? Is it going to work out where I don't have to have another surgery? And so that was in the back of my mind, but also I was very excited to see what Mark Jr. would be like as a big brother. He was always such a happy baby anyway. And so to see what he might be like as a big brother was going to be exciting.
Obviously, those thoughts were in my mind as well with the complications from before. And obviously, you hope and you pray that the pregnancy will not be as complicated or as difficult or, like you said, as many twists and turns in that.
And this pregnancy actually, thankfully, praise the Lord, was pretty normal. I had regular visits with the midwife and everything was going well. Our due date was July 20th, which was only 13 months and 15 days after Mark Jr. was born. And even though Mark Jr. was less than a year old, I talked to him about having a baby in my belly. He actually caught on to it really quickly. He would come and hug me and say baby, and he would tap my belly and say baby. So I don't know that he understood or he was just repeating me, but I was reading a book to him. He was sitting on my lap. And that's when I felt the baby in my belly kick for the first time.
I don't know. But babies react to the outside. If sometimes it depends on if you're singing, talking, or whatever, they seem to react
Some of my best memories are when you would sing to the babies while they were in my womb. You would get closer to my stomach and you would sing. Those were great times. The second baby didn't move as much as Mark Jr. did, so I was often pushing on my belly to make sure that the baby would react. For Mark Jr., though, every time we were in church and we were singing,
That's true.
when he would move the most. He was very, very active when there was music going on. So he was really, really into the music, even as a little baby. But this second pregnancy went really well, and everything was going great. So on Saturday, July 17th, Mark was taking me out for dinner because my birthday was the next day on July 18th. So we had to stop by the midwife's house. She lived in a different town that was closer to more restaurants. And so we stopped by her house and we told her what we were going to do. And so she checked me and she said, I think you're going to have this baby today. But she said, go on out and have your dinner and then come back when we were finished eating. So we went out for dinner. I had a great meal, but unfortunately, I got very sick right after eating. I called the midwife to tell her what was going on, and she said, get over here as quick as you can. So we left the restaurant. We went back to her house, and I went into labor. And at this time is when Mark called his family, and they all came to the midwife's house, and they brought Mark Jr. with them. So I labored through the night and into the next day. I remember being in labor and having Mark's family singing happy birthday to me. So less than an hour into July 18th, our second child was born. Unfortunately, the baby had been breech, which means that it wasn't in the right position for birthing. However, the midwife was able to work with me and get him into a good position. It wasn't the best of situations because the baby's heart rate had started to decrease. So she told me, we gotta get him out fast. We did. And when he was born, she said, it's another boy. And I remember seeing him and just crying because he was so beautiful. However, once again, like with Mark Jr., he was not crying. This time, though, it wasn't because he was alert, but because he was having difficulty breathing. Yeah. And like I said in the last episode, for me, that first cry means they're good.
Yeah.
They're healthy. They're okay. And so I hadn't heard that with Mark Jr., but he was still healthy and okay. And then I didn't hear that with my second baby either.
Yeah, everything leading up to the delivery was normal. You know, the midwife was very professional. She had great composure. This was not her first delivery. She provided a calm atmosphere, even when things maybe were not optimal or 100%. Or if there were some complications, even during the pregnancy or afterwards, which happens anywhere. It happens in hospitals. With our midwife, and I'm sure with thousands of others, they have the equipment that they need for pre, during, and post. And I think some people, if you've never experienced a home delivery, then there's probably a lot of questions people have. Our midwife had different things on hand in case she needed for a situation like this.
Right. And also, just a little bit of a pause on the delivery and everything. If you remember from the last episode, we had 2 boy names, and we used one of them for Mark Jr., and we had a girl name, and we did not find out the gender of this baby either until it was born.
Okay. I meant to say this last episode too. Growing up as a child, and of course I was born in the 70s, from as far back as I can remember, I never wanted to know the gender of the child before the child was born. Not that it was good, bad, or indifferent. It's just personally, to me, it was almost like one of life's greatest surprises. This is 9 months of wondering. And then to finally find out, to me, it's just a great surprise.
As you may remember from our last episode, we already had baby names picked out. And since we didn't find out the gender of this child, we still had one boy name that we had not used. and a girl name that we hadn't chosen. So then this was our opportunity to use that boy name. So we named him Caleb Jordan. And there I'm going to pause because we added something to his name when I was pregnant with the second child. And he said, if it's a boy, can we give it my dad's middle name? Because I always wanted my dad's middle name. And I said, what about Jordan? And he's like, well, we can give him 2 middle names. So this child has the longest name in our whole family. His name is Caleb Jordan Leroy Gould.
Yeah. So growing up, my dad's name is David, and I'm the second born. So my mom and dad, their first child was a boy. I'm the second child. And they named my brother David. My dad's name is David. My granddad's name was David. My great-granddad's name was David. And honestly, I don't remember how far back it goes, but that's sufficient for today. And I start to get older, and I'm obviously realize that my brother's named after my dad. And I don't know, just it's kind of goofy, I know, but I was kind of bummed out that I wasn't named after my dad. And so I thought, wow, man, you could have given me your middle name. I like my dad's middle name. And I'm like, well, I could have had part of his name too. So this was kind of an afterthought with Caleb. Mark's eyes are brown like mine. And Caleb was born, and it's like, whoa, he has got some really cool blue eyes.
That's why when I said I looked at him, he was just beautiful.
It was amazing.
His hair was almost like a strawberry blonde. It had some red in it, but it also had some blonde. But then he opened his eyes, and the second I saw them, it was like the ocean sparkling.
Yeah.
It was a different kind of blue, and there was actually sparkles. It looked so sparkling to me. As I said, Caleb was having trouble breathing, and our midwife took action fast. She gave him some oxygen and checked his vital signs continuously. However, his breathing was not improving, and the decision was made to take him to a nearby hospital. So my husband, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and the midwife took our son to the medical center nearby. I got to hold him once before they left with him. The midwife had an assistant there with her who told me that she would take me to the hospital if I could get up, take a shower, get dressed, and eat something. I did all of those things as quickly as I could because I wanted to be with my new baby. Meanwhile, Mark Jr. was in one of the other bedrooms in the midwife's house, asleep. I went off to the hospital, and when I got there, Mark was there, obviously, and he had seen the baby a few times.
We got there, and the midwife was holding Caleb, and she had the oxygen. So we're standing there, and the midwife says, this baby was just born. I just delivered the baby. And she said, I'm a little concerned about, his breathing, and we want to, bring him in and have him checked out. They were just kind of standing there, kind of in a daze. They're like, you just delivered this baby? And they were kind of confused. And she's like, yes, I'm a midwife, and this was a home delivery. It's like they were confused. So they take him back. They decided to take him back to it's called the NICU, N-I-C-U. This is just a section of the hospital that's for intensive care of babies, neonatal intensive care unit.
So by the time I got there, he was already in a little cradle. They have these small cradles instead of beds in the NICU. And I walked in. They told me to scrub in. So I had to scrub my hands, wash my hands all the way up to my elbows. And so I did that. And then Mark and I walked into the NICU together to go see Caleb. And a nurse stopped us, and she had already met you. She looks at you and then looks at me, and she says, well, who are you? And I said, I'm the mother. And she's like, no, you aren't. That baby was just born a few hours ago. And I said, I know, I'm the mother.
She's looking at me. I'm like, this is my wife. This is the mother of the baby. She just had the baby just, not that long ago. And this woman was like, just like dazed and confused.
But I can see where that nurse was coming from, because all the other mothers, as we walked by to get to Caleb, were sitting in wheelchairs beside
Yeah.
of their babies.
Well, and here's the thing. You did not have any kind of medications.
Right.
And so here she is walking in on her own.
Thought about that.
Yeah,
But they
so-
probably did think that I had an epidural and that I wouldn't be able to walk because I
Right.
would be numb from the waist down, which
Yeah.
is what an epidural does.
Right.
And for people who want or need an epidural, I'm glad that it's there for them. But I didn't feel like I needed
Yeah.
one. So
She said, wow. She's like, I'm just surprised. She said, you're looking really good for having a baby just like a few hours ago.
we walked over to see him for the first time, and immediately I just put my finger there so he could hold my finger. And that was what we did for
Yeah.
hours. We just sat there with him, and he held our fingers. He's hooked up to all these machines that are monitoring his heart, his lungs, his everything. He's being fed through a tube.
That the hardest part was seeing the different things hooked up to him, the hoses, the wires.
So they said that there was no doctor there at that point. And so a doctor had not seen Caleb. So they said the doctor will be in tomorrow. And then the doctor can talk to you more about why they think he was having trouble breathing. He ended up being there for a few days.
Yeah, he did. Here's something interesting too. So we lived about an hour from the hospital where he was staying, and we could travel back and forth, but it was not that convenient to travel back and forth. And we were told about the Ronald McDonald House, and it's tied into Ronald McDonald from, as you've guessed it, McDonald's. And it's a charitable organization that they do a lot of things for children that have medical issues. And they also do things for the parents of these children in terms of providing a place to stay if you live at a distance from the hospital. And that's what we did for the few days that we were there.
It's like
Yeah,
a really
this
big
one was like a house. Yeah.
And everyone shares the main rooms, like the living room and the kitchen. People bring in food, they put their name on it, but if their name is on it and you want some of it, they always told us you were welcome to it. Then they would buy stuff and say, you're welcome to this.
Yeah.
We brought in things. Your family brought in things. So we stayed in this room that had maybe 3 beds.
It was a big bedroom.
But
It was nice.
It was a really nice place.
It was an old house.
And there was a shuttle that went from the Ronald McDonald House to each hospital where the babies were. And so I would be there every morning, get on the shuttle to go over, spend the day with Caleb, then come back to the Ronald McDonald House in the evening. And Mark was working some of the days, and some of the days he wasn't. His parents were there with me sometimes. Sometimes it was just me. Mark Jr. was there one day, but he couldn't see his brother because little kids could not go in the NICU. So
Yeah.
he didn't get to see him. Do you want to tell about what they said was the problem?
Yeah. Basically, the lungs had just not developed during the pregnancy, which apparently is a fairly common situation with babies. And it was just a matter of, I guess, over time, their lungs become more mature. So,
He was only 2 days early, which his lungs should have probably been developed by then. But the doctor said sometimes it just happens.
yeah.
So, and he only had to stay in there for a few days. After 6 days, the doctor said his lungs were looking really good. On the 7th day, they said, we'll be able to let you go home tomorrow. And so we were there for a total of 8 days altogether. So after 8 days, his lungs were developed enough that they were good sending us home. He had no complications once we got home. I took him to his regular pediatrician visits. I always said, make sure you listen to his lungs. And then I would say, how do his lungs sound? Every single time. His lungs are great. Everything sounds good.
Yeah.
So praise the Lord. Whatever was the cause of his lungs not being fully developed when he was born is not an issue for him and wasn't an issue for him as a child.
Through all of this, I'm very thankful for our Christian faith. And God provides a peace that passes understanding. God gives you a peace in times of turmoil and trouble if you have faith in Him. As I've said before, He was there before, during, and after. And another situation where I didn't feel cavalier about it, but at the same time, it was a matter of just trusting that I felt at ease. I felt at peace. I felt comfort that God was in control.
So after that 8 days, we were able to bring Caleb home. And we brought him first to your mom and dad's house where Mark Jr. was. So he got to see his little brother for the first time. And I remember he would come over to him. He was running around in Mark's parents' house playing full tilt.
He loved to run. He would run everywhere he goes.
Like he always was. And so he would come over to Caleb in Caleb's little car seat. And he would look in the car seat, and then he would go, baby. And then he'd run off and play again. Then he'd come back and say, baby. He was very gentle. So we brought Caleb down to our house and Mark. And so it was our first night in our house with our whole family back together. And it was great. Mark Jr. loved Caleb so much. He eventually started calling him Bubba instead of baby or brother. He called him Bubba. And so I remember sometimes having to put Caleb down for a nap. And Mark didn't want him to go to sleep because Mark didn't like to sleep either. And he didn't want Caleb to sleep. So he would just start saying, Bubba, Bubba. And so he wanted to keep him awake. There were lots of times where Caleb would sit in his baby bouncy seat. And he would just watch Mark play. And he was so content.
He was content. He was quiet.
Very quiet, content, rarely crying baby. Both of our babies were really good. Both of our boys were really good babies. And so he would just watch Mark, and he was so happy just watching Mark.
He was.
And so they grew up playing together. They grew up together, only a year apart, so that was kind of cool. They were
13 months and 13 days.
Yeah, it turned out to be 13 months and 13 days. And so they were just the best of friends from the first day that they met each other. So it was a great experience.
How much did Caleb weigh? I don't think we said that earlier. Mark was 5 pounds 5 ounces.
Very small. Caleb was 6 pounds and 3 ounces. So a little bigger.
Yeah, a little bigger.
So Caleb was 6'3", and
his
now he's
weight,
about
not his
6'3".
height.
Just last week, Caleb and I celebrated our birthday. I won't say how old I turned, but Caleb is now 20 years old. So Caleb had his 20th birthday last week, and it is fun to have our birthday on the same day. Caleb always loved that growing up. We would go to the grocery store, and he'd be like, my birthday's tomorrow, and it's my mama's birthday too. So he was always really sweet about that.
It's always been a very cool thing to be able to tell people, hey, tomorrow's my wife's birthday, but guess what? It's my son's birthday too. So he was born on her birthday, and then, of course, everybody says, wow, what a great birthday gift. And
I always tell him he was my best birthday gift, and he was my birthday gift from God, because he really was. But Caleb always spent a lot of time watching me cook. If I was in the kitchen cooking, he was usually standing behind me watching me cook. He loved to eat.
He did like to eat.
And so maybe he was in there to get the first plate. That's what I always think. But somehow he gained a lot of skill.
Yeah, it's like, hey, Mom, can I watch you cook? Oh, since I'm here, I'll go ahead and take that first plate.
But now he can cook really well. He's got more skills than me. He might have gotten all my skill and then some of his own, because he's a really good cook. He comes up with things in his mind, and I have to find a recipe. And he's very tall. I'm 5'2" on a good day. What are you?
5'9".
And so Caleb is at least 6 foot.
Yeah.
If he's not a little over 6. So I'm not sure where that came from. There was a tall gene in our family somewhere.
Good old Uncle Gene. He's a great guy. He's a great son. He's a great brother. He's a great cousin, grandson. He's a really good guy. He's always been a hard worker. He's been caring, been very thoughtful. We've had a lot of fun together. He loves sports. He loves to play. He loves to watch the sports. Loves to fish.
He still has those beautiful blue eyes.
Man, he's still got, his eyes are
amazing.
Something else.
But one thing about him, we talked about how he was quiet as a baby. Now he's the more introverted of the two brothers.
Yeah.
Mark's more extroverted. he's very friendly, but he has to break that ice a little bit slower than Mark.
So it was fun to watch the two of them growing up, and they understood and appreciated each other's qualities, and they kind of, worked off of those together as a little tag team.
I was just thinking about the Transformer videos they would make.
Oh, they used to make some funny videos and little
when they
toy reviews and stuff. They're so funny.
When they would start laughing, and then the other one would start laughing, and then it was just a ball of laughter. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. They were always really good friends.
Yeah. Good times, and really, really blessed. And so it's just another chapter in our lives of child number 2. Will there be another? Join us next week.
Exactly.
In the next episode, as we travel down this road of life, this journey of our family, and find out if there'll be another addition to the Gould family. We hope you have a great day. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope this helps you to join the conversation.